And Major Garrett is at the White House with more. Major, let's begin with those the executive order surrounding the wall. I just want to read you, in the last 8 minutes or so, Donald Trump has tweeted and said that if Mexico is unwilling to pay for the badly needed wall, then it would be better to cancel the upcoming meeting. We know the position of the Mexican government. We know Mr. Trump's position. And given, as you've reported, that Congress is going to have to foot the bill, how is this ever going to get done?
Well, it's a work in progress for this administration. It was an enormously important promise for candidate Trump during the campaign, one that was so familiar and became such a hallmark of his campaign rallies that all he would have to do is start beginning to walk into the subject and the crowd would answer back. Who's going to pay for the wall? Mexico. That was great theater. Tremendous politics propelled Donald Trump to the presidency. Now is the hard part. The Mexican government doesn't want to pay, will not use any revenue. Could there be any other alternate forms of financing from Mexico? The president said in his interview last night there will be. It may be a complicated formula, he said, but there will be some formula. That's all in his mind. That's all a concept. It's all currently a theory. What we do know is the executive order that he signed yesterday does have real clout because it's consistent with a 2006 law passed by Congress, signed by President Bush, that authorized construction of a physical barrier. Why hasn't it been built? Congress never put the money behind that actual law. But there's a law that says this barrier can be built. Now, finding the money. Perhaps the Department of Homeland Security, under President Trump's direction, will reprogram money that's currently going to one item on the agenda of the Department of Homeland Security, move it over to begin planning and construction of the physical barrier, the wall. Congress may put together an additional bit of financing for all this. All of this is to be determined. But clearly, President Trump wants to set this direction, set it soon, and then, as he often says, we'll see what happens.
In your piece, we also heard you mention other action the president took yesterday in regards to immigration, allowing ICE agents to target undocumented immigrants, cutting federal funding to the so-called sanctuary cities. What's been the reaction? Any pushback? You know, these sanctuary cities, a number of them are quite large cities: Los Angeles, New York.
Los Angeles, New York, Boston, Seattle, San Francisco. Many cities in this country are so-called sanctuary cities. And not by accident, but by political conversation and political affirmation. These cities are proudly places where they say, as a matter of policy, local police will not arrest and or detain anyone simply for being in the country illegally. And if they come upon someone here illegally, they're not going to go out of their way to let federal authorities know so they can be deported. That's why they call them sanctuary cities. Well, what the president said yesterday is, if you retain that status, I will do what I can to deprive you of federal dollars. We don't know exactly what that means. Lots of federal dollars flow from different channels to sanctuary cities. But already many of either the mayors or those who represent those cities have said, we'll see you in court. We don't believe this is constitutional, and we will fight to maintain our federal funding. This will be litigated in many different courthouses around the country, I suspect. And as a political matter for these mayors and these local city council officials, sanctuary cities is something they're either proud of or have been politically comfortable with for a good long while. And if the rallies on Saturday, the day after the inauguration, in most urban centers in America are any indication, this conversation, this tumult, this sense of resistance to some actions from the Trump White House likely to be intensified by this move, not reduced.
Yeah, you know, I don't want to get off track, but I couldn't help but to think, you know, a lot of these cities are cities that did not vote for Trump. And the conversation that has been coming up over the past few days when we listen to him talk is that he appears to be talking once again to his supporters and not necessarily to the people who didn't believe in him. And here we have it with these sanctuary cities.
And for the president, it's a very simple formulation, and it's one that worked very well for him politically. This is not what he regards consistent with American law. These people are in the country illegally, and if local police find them, they should work with the federal authorities to remove them. Pure and simple. Common sense, application of the law. From his law and order point of view, this isn't even a discussable or debatable topic. But for the sanctuary cities and the political orientation they've taken to this issue, it very much is, and that's where the clash starts. We're not sure exactly where it will end.
Major, as we saw in the interview with ABC, the president is continuing to stand by his claims of widespread voter fraud. He wants to investigate these undocumented folks, people that he says that are dead, that are on the voter rolls, that almost all the secretaries of state say did not happen. On the other hand, he does not want to investigate the claims that the intelligence community has made that Russia tried to influence the election. Have we heard anything more from the administration about what exactly that investigation that he promised will entail?
No, not any kind of specifics. It would be, my assumption would be something that the Justice Department would take up. And if it's given authority and given the financing to do it, it could begin that work. It would be, as you suggested, a cumbersome task. But one of the things that's been suggested by the president and those speaking on his behalf is that really this White House is only interested in states that Donald Trump lost. And he has said if there's fraud, and he believes there is, it only occurred among Hillary Clinton supporters, no Donald Trump supporters. And that orientation itself defies all political science research on the tendencies of and the prevalence of voter fraud, which does exist at some minor statistical level, maybe 0.25%, 0.5%, and if you aggregate it across a national election, there are some 1 or 2 or 3 millions there, possibly, but they are not relevant to the overall outcome, and they are on both sides of the aisle. But this White House appears only interested in fraud on the Democratic side, or people who didn't vote for Trump, and that in itself undercuts any legitimacy of this investigation.
Major, before we let you go, we know that the president will be raising his pen and putting it to paper once again today. Any indication as to what we can expect?
1 or 2 things today. There could be another executive order or action or memoranda. We'll have to distill which it is, and they're all different, on trade, or it could be something dealing with refugee flows, temporarily halting them until better screening can be put in place on the campaign trail. Then candidate Trump called that extreme vetting. We'll see what the definition is there, but it's either going to be on refugee flows or something related to his trade agenda, which could possibly be, based on a tweet I saw just a few moments ago, suspending the United States or renegotiating or filing some sort of official paperwork to begin the process of renegotiating the North American Free Trade Agreement between the United States, Canada, and Mexico.
All right, we'll be watching. Our Major Garrett at the White House. Thank you, Major.
Sure.